Don't know what that used to be. Some kind of pump by the looks of it. Hi guys, hope you're all having a great day. I wanted to make a quick video talking about the riots that are going on in the UK at the moment and what my views on the situation are. So, I mean, why should you care? You shouldn't. I'm just a guy with an opinion. But I'm very concerned at the state of the country at the moment. I think that we are more divided than any time before in most people's living memory. And people are starting to express that. And my worry is that it will get violent. Now, on the topic of immigration itself, you know, I do think a kind of world oneness, like a global humanity, a world without borders, it's great, you know, it's the dream, and it's something that I am trying to work towards. But you can't deny the fact that mass immigration has had a negative effect on this country. And I think for us to get to that stage of, you know, world unity, human unity, things have got to stabilise before we can attempt something like that. Because I've met and befriended enough people from enough different races, backgrounds, religions, whatever, to know that the vast majority of them are completely sound. You know, most people, at the end of the day, if you start chatting to them, you'll find common ground and you can get along. But the types of people that are coming over from these war-torn countries that have grown up in such desperation and in a mostly lawless society, they're so completely different to us in terms of the values that they share and the culture that they have. And they don't have the, I guess, emotional maturity that comes from the privilege of growing up in a developed society that isn't just ruled by the strongest or the most corrupt or the most powerful. Well, I say that, but you know, not to the like warlord extent of somebody coming from the Central African Republic. And I can't blame any of them. You know, if I was born in Iraq or in the South Sudan, I'd want to get out as well. And people are blaming the individuals, you know, people on the right wing who are, you know, seeing the impact that these people are having on local communities and stuff. And they're not happy about it, but they're taking it out on the individuals. And really, it's not their fault, you know. I think if any of us had been born in their position, then we would stop at nothing to try and escape to a better country for a better quality of life. And, you know, the government, they give them housing, they give them benefits. It's no wonder they come here. But at the same time, it's becoming impossible to ignore that wherever they are, wherever they tend to be housed, wherever they move into, crime rates skyrocket. Cases of rape skyrocket, violence skyrockets, petty thefts. And people are noticing and they're tired of it. And the thing is, there isn't a clear solution either. I think really these refugees, they're being used as pawns in a chess game by some very powerful people. And I worry what's going to happen if they succeed, and I'm worried what's going to happen if they don't. If you look at the way that we evolved as well, I want to go on to the topic of free speech now as well, and how it's become so taboo for people to talk about these things and for people to be open about how they truly feel. That, you know, people are scared to voice their thoughts now, and for good reason. Like, people in this country are being arrested over tweets. Where's the free speech? And whenever you suppress free speech, it inevitably becomes violent, because as the way that we evolved in tribes, you know, it was about survival. If you survived, if you had the knowledge, then it meant something, and you were respected and you were listened to. And if somebody came along with a new idea, then you were probably quite reluctant to try it, because why change what's always worked? But the beauty in humanity is that there is that one, sometimes, of a group who has that idea, and not only that, is able to communicate it through language which we've evolved, to actually change the mind of the group and advance that group forward. And that's why freedom of idea, freedom of speech is so important to us. And when you get a group in power, whether it be on a tribal level or a governmental level, and they try to suppress that, then people who can't share their ideas anymore start getting angry about it. And they start hiding what they think and only talk about it to a select group of friends who they know agree with them. And then that creates an echo chamber, because there's no room for open discussion anymore. And when it does become that echo chamber, and both sides aren't even caring to listen to the other side's arguments anymore, they're both just shouting their own ideas at each other and not listening. And it's a cycle that's repeated throughout history. You could say it's what drives history. Yeah, and then people get violent. I want to try and explain as well why I believe that power does corrupt people. And I think it's because most people, they aren't emotionally mature enough to understand the world on a deeper level. They see it as only them playing a single player game, when really we're in an MMORPG. And I've had enough weird experiences with various psychedelics to kind of believe that as well. I definitely think that there's some kind of creator, and I do view the universe as some kind of game that it's created in order to amuse itself, because the game of life is the most fascinating game that you can play. And you know, the only thing more fascinating than playing the game of life is playing it at a grander scale, to be able to control more things. And that's where that drive to power comes from. You know, it's going to be more interesting to have a playthrough as a king than as a slave. That's why people tend to be drawn to it. But because society is so hyper-competitive right now, under capitalism, for example, then it creates this win-at-all-cost mentality amongst the players that makes them play dirty. So it's this fascinating game, right? And we've already said that the only thing more fascinating is to play it at scale. So what scale could be greater than playing as every single character at once? And what's more, forget the knowledge that you were even playing the game in the first place. I think that's what the creator has done. I think we're all fragments of a one consciousness, a one soul, that are out here experiencing our own creation. And it's what would be described as an infinite game. If any of you did check out my book recommendation for finite and infinite games, I can't remember who by. Life is the only infinite game. Which is why you've got to learn to play it in the right way. Because you can't play it for progress in the material, for things that you can do in the game, because there's an infinite amount of time for you to do that thing an infinite number of times again. And so the act of doing it, it wouldn't amuse you anymore. So the only thing that you can learn to do is to play the game fuck, I've lost it. Bastard. You have to learn to love the process of playing the game. The process of improving just because you can. That's why I like Rocket League. It's a lot of finite games, 5-minute matches, contained within the infinite skill ceiling. And the satisfaction, if you play it with the right mindset, it isn't in winning or losing or anything from the particular games. It's learning from them. Because learning from them allows you to get better at the game itself. And I think that if you look at our lives as those 5-minute Rocket League matches, and then this kind of universal progress that we seem to constantly be speeding towards, you know, it's a game with a physics engine that runs on time and the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Things tending towards chaos and disorder. If you spray some Febreze into the room, at the second that all of the particles leave the bottle, they all act in a somewhat predictable manner. You know, if you kind of freeze frame it right down, you could probably predict quite well what that spread of particles would look like. But as it diffuses throughout the room, it becomes impossible to predict it. And we've shown that we can create games that we can't predict if there'll be an ending or not. And if we can do it, then whatever created us absolutely can do it as well. It's a really helpful metaphor as an approach to life. Because once you realise that you are just playing, then life becomes really fun. You know, this business that I've started, it's not about individual sales or getting clients or any of that stuff. I do it because I find the game of business really interesting. The fact that people are competing over these tokens that are actually meaningless, really. Like £1 doesn't have any intrinsic value, not since we got taken off the gold standard. And, you know, the only thing that fiat money is good for is tricking some sucker into giving you essential goods, actually useful things. And they do that because they have this crazy idea that they'll be able to trick other people with it too, and it somehow all works. So yeah, that game's fascinating. And capitalism, for all of its flaws, it is a great system for advancement and innovation and breakthrough. But what if the next step to society was on adopting capitalism, but on a Darwinistic level? Everybody who wanted a certain thing politically, they can just go out and do it with all of the people that find the same. I think a system where people could just what's the word? Secede from the country and just decide to start their own little society with no oversight. You know, everybody just agrees that if you go under that, let's say all the communists wanted to get together and start a little communist society, there's nothing stopping them. And everybody there is just under the agreement that that society will reap whatever that society sows. That's part of the reason why I want to start the commune. Because I do want to try and, you know, facilitate this alternative society. Because I know that I could make it work. And it would show people that there was an alternative. Thing is though, people are so entrenched in their belief that capitalism is the only way, and they think that it has to be this kind of hyper-competitive, everybody out for themselves type world. It doesn't have to be. But that's what the rich people don't want you to find out, because it's their money that gives them their power. And people who make money, they see themselves as better than other people. They say, well, I've done it, why can't you? And they just see the people that don't make money as sore losers of the game, because in their minds, the game of making money is the only game there is. The game of power is the only game there is. But it's not. But the money gives you the power. And so it's then in the people who are in power, it's in their best interests to keep things that way. And I think that the only way I can prove them wrong is by first beating them at their own game and succeeding with the business, and then showing them that afterwards there's a different path to take than a sense of superiority. That money and power don't mean anything. But to show that, I have to beat them in their own game first.